yourself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot see.
Good morning and welcome to NUFC Matters. It is transfer deadline day. It is semi-final second leg day. And in Sunderland, it's Tuesday. Ross Gregory is here from the Evening Chronicle to give his views on the transfer window and how it's going to shape up today for Newcastle. Will there be any more ins? Will there be any more outs? And also looking ahead to tonight's second leg, which Newcastle go into with a narrow 1-0 lead. Morning, Ross.
Morning, Steve. Morning, everyone.
Good to see you. And as always, plenty of people in the chat to ask us a few questions to get us through this next hour. Newcastle have signed Harrison Ashby. It's official now. The first thing that we see today, it's come up on the ticker tape on Sky News and Sky Sports News. And Keith Downey is plonked in the car park outside St James's Park, giving us an update on what else might or might not happen today. But from your perspective, Ross, what are you hearing at the Chronicle?
Yeah, so look, it's going to be a busy day. Obviously, the Harrison Ashby deal's just been announced, and that's one bit of business that was always going to go through today. An interesting signing. He's obviously coming in as backup to Kieran Trippier, and he's a player that Newcastle have kept close tabs on for a number of months. And yeah, he's obviously coming in. He's not going to go straight into the first team. He's there to kind of provide support and provide backup for Kieran Trippier. He's still a young player, only 21. Hasn't made too many appearances for West Ham's first team, but he's a player that of potential and somebody that West Ham didn't want to lose. They blocked the move back in August. They blocked the move for Ashby to come to Newcastle. He wanted to join Newcastle, and West Ham decided they didn't want him to leave at that point. Hope that they would be able to get him in the squad and get him into the West Ham team a little bit more than what he has done. But he's been hit by a few injuries and whatnot over the last couple of months, so he hasn't quite pushed on with West Ham, and he's still been very keen to come to Newcastle. So Newcastle were always after a kind of backup right back. Yes, Kieran Trippier is in fantastic form. There's Javier Manquillo and Emil Kraft as well, obviously injured. Manquillo doesn't seem to be somebody that Eddie Howe either trusts or particularly rates. So they're always looking to bring somebody else in. The beauty of somebody like Ashby as well is I don't think he adds to the 25-man squad. He can go in as an underage player as well, so that frees up a little bit more room in the squad as well. So that was always a deal that they wanted to be done. They always wanted a kind of backup right back in this window. The other departments obviously have been a bit more flexible. Have been a little bit more of a need depending on injuries, depending on other business that's been done. And Anthony Gordon getting it over the line at the weekend was again another really important bit of business for Newcastle, having sold Chris Wood. That kind of ticked off that creative attacking hole that Newcastle felt that they had, especially with Chris Wood leaving. Obviously, since that, John Joe Shelby's situation is developed, and he's on his way to Forest. And that has left now Newcastle really desperate. I'm not saying desperately, actually, that's probably the wrong word, but trying in these last few hours to get some sort of central midfielder in to cover that, to plug that gap that Shelby will leave. I do think Shelby's departure leaves Newcastle a little bit light in that area, personally, and I think it's a little bit of a risk to let somebody go if they're not guaranteed to bring in a replacement. I understand it from Shelby's point of view. I understand it from a financial point of view. With him only having a few months left on his contract, I get all that. But from a football point of view, I think it leaves Newcastle a little bit exposed. What we're hearing is that they are very, very keen still to get some business done between now and the deadline of 11 o'clock tonight. Really keen to bring in a midfielder. There's obviously 2 or 3 or 4 names that that have been suggested. Conor Gallagher's name isn't going to go away. Sander Burge and one or two others, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. There is players that Newcastle are interested in. There is players that Newcastle are keen in, but because of the financial situation, because of the money that they've spent, they are minded. Their preference, Newcastle's preference, is for a loan deal, with possibly an obligation for the summer, just because of the financial restrictions that are under play at the minute. That's I can see some of the comments about financial fair play and understandably with what Chelsea have been spending, but we have to realise Newcastle are in a completely different situation to where Chelsea are. Chelsea are trying obviously as well to get around some of the rules and regulations with their contract situations, but that's where Newcastle are. They're looking for a loan deal. They're looking to try and bring somebody in. They might decide ultimately that if a loan deal isn't possible and the right person comes available, that they will go out and spend. But that is the preference heading into today, was to bring in a midfielder on loan who could plug the gap left by John Joe Shelby. Yeah,
I mean, Conor Gallagher's been mentioned in dispatches on more than one occasion, but the feeling you get with that is that he would prefer probably to stay in London. We know that Everton have got money to burn after we brought in Anthony Gordon, and they've been rebutted with their offer, not by the club, it has to be said, but by the player not keen on a move to Merseyside. Is that one likely to be dead in the water, do you think? And do you think Newcastle might be forced to look maybe further afield, even abroad, for a midfielder to replace Shelby?
I don't think Gallagher's dead in the water. I think Newcastle will keep trying with that. They'll go back in.
Permanent deal or a loan?
Newcastle will want a loan. Chelsea don't want a loan. Chelsea don't want a loan to Newcastle. A rival club and another one who are pushing for European places. So Chelsea don't want to loan. They would rather do it on a permanent basis. That said, the money that they're asking for Conor Gallagher looks really, really high. Now I know Newcastle you could argue Newcastle just paid 40-45 million for Anthony Gordon, and he is he's not been capped by England yet. Conor Gallagher has. He was in the World Cup squad. You could argue Conor Gallagher, if you go and buy Anthony Gordon's price tag, Conor Gallagher is worth more than 45 million. But I don't think Newcastle will go anywhere near that. I might be wrong, but I don't think Newcastle will go anywhere near that in these final hours of the window. Chelsea are going to have to move somebody out. They're going to have to move one or two others out. It's just gone 10 o'clock our time now. We're live, and it's just gone 10 o'clock. There's a lot of business still to be done. There's still 13 hours of this window still to go, and we've seen over previous transfer windows that what is thought and said at 10 o'clock, what is thought and said at 1 p.m. or even 5 or 6 p.m. It changes very, very quickly as that clock ticks down. In clubs, it's kind of frantically trying to get that business done before the window closes. So I don't think Conor Gallagher's dead in the water, but I think it's going to be a very difficult deal for Newcastle to do.
Yeah, it's one to watch, certainly. Ian says Shelby and Wood have freed up 180 grand a week. I mean, that's the big thing, getting those players off the wage bill. Ian also says, how many times do I have to listen to Eddie saying we have no money, then splashing out? I don't trust him. Yeah, he plays a good game, Eddie, certainly. And add Darlow to that, Ian, as well. Barry, you're right. Darlow, of course, off the wage books, you would imagine, tonight, if Newcastle progress to the final. Be interesting to see what happens there, though. John Hackett says, if no one else comes in today, are we weaker than at the beginning of January? Are you happy for us to keep our powder dry for the summer when we could get our main targets? Are we weaker if we don't bring anybody else in? We've signed, we signed a right back who we've been chasing for quite a while now. Somebody who is going to learn and eventually take over from Trippier, you would imagine. You've signed Anthony Gordon, who is, young, 21-year-old. As Lee Ryder pointed out from the Chronicle yesterday at the press conference, he's for the here and now, and he's for the future. And, you've lost Chris Wood, albeit on loan, to Nottingham Forest, because could come back at the end of the season. We've lost John Joe Shelby permanently, and potentially Darlow to go out to Hull on loan as well. Is that weaker? I would beg to differ. I'd say we're probably in a stronger position because I think we've replaced Shelby with a far better player, or Chris Wood with a far better player. Sorry. Yes, we're not as strong in the midfield area, but we've got options. We can move players around.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, that one. I was thinking about this one the other day. Are Newcastle stronger or weaker? I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I think Newcastle are in a maybe he's in the same sort of position. I think. Look, I'll start with the Chris Wood one. Chris Wood deal, him going out and Anthony Gordon coming in. It's a long-term deal. Anthony Gordon is a good player, and he will be able to hopefully hit the ground running. But he hasn't had the strongest season with Everton. He might take a little bit of time to find his form. He's not really started a game for Everton over the last couple of months, so he's going to need a little bit of time to get up to speed and up to sharpness. He's a very different player to Chris Wood, which is what kind of intrigues me a little bit, because you haven't replaced like for like. You haven't replaced somebody who can play through the middle, who can get on the end of crosses, who can hold the ball up, who can link play. And we've replaced them with a wide player, with another wide player. When there's a lot of wide players that Newcastle have now. If you had Anthony Gordon into Murphy, Fraser, Almiron, ASM, Joe Linton's can play out wide and has been. There's a lot of options Newcastle have got there on those wide positions. So I think the squad is as strong as what it was going into the window. It's different. There's a little bit of different balance to it. If nobody comes in to replace John Joe Shelby, though, I'm a bit concerned. I'd be a little bit concerned about that central midfield area. It only takes one injury to Bruno, and then all of a sudden you're having to put square pegs into round holes. You'd have to put Sean Longstaff into that central holding role, which I'm no doubt he can do, but is he going to be as effective? Is that his natural position? I don't quite think it is. So without that centre midfielder coming in, somebody who can play or deputise for Bruno, like what John Joe Shelby could do, is it just leaves Newcastle in a bit of a precarious position for me in that area.
Yeah, Burge is another one which has been mentioned quite a lot today. Mr. Anderson saying, is there nothing in the Burge transfer? I mean, Sheffield United again, have other suitors for this player. Not one I'm really too familiar with. I've got to be perfectly honest, Ross. I don't know whether this is a great acquisition or not. A lot of people speak highly of him. A lot of people say that it would be a great acquisition. A lot of people on the show last night saying that, bring him in. You'll notice a difference immediately. Again, people saying it's an upgrade from Shelby. What's your thoughts on that?
So I know a little bit about Sander Burge. I've watched a bit of Sheffield United, and I watched him a few times when he first signed, when he first came to the club. I was doing a bit of work down in Sheffield at the time, so I did take in a couple of games, and I have watched him a little bit. And I've got a number of friends who are Sheffield United fans and season ticket holders, so I do kind of keep up with what's happening at Sheffield United a little bit. Just from a professional and a personal perspective. Sander Burge he's not a holding midfielder. He has played as a holding midfielder for Sheffield United, but that's not where his strengths lie. It's not where he has his best performances. So he can play, sit in front of that back four, and he can play in that role. But his best performances has been higher up in the pitch, a bit more like where Longstaff's type of playing, in that kind of one of the eights, if you like, who can press and drive forward, and as well as obviously do some defensive work as well. He's very, very. When he's good, he's good. When he's good, he's very good. Sander Burge, he's an athlete. He can get around the pitch, but his consistency hasn't quite developed. He hasn't been producing performances always on a consistent basis for the Blades. It'd be another interesting signing if he comes in. He is highly rated, and what I would always say as well is, and I'll put this with Anthony Gordon as well, is that just because of players playing at a certain level and producing performances of a certain caliber and a certain level at the club that he's at currently. We've seen how Eddie Howe and his coaching staff can improve players, can mould them, can fit them into a different system and get more out of them. We've seen that with Miggy Almiron and Joe Linton and Joe Willock and Fabian Scher and so on and so forth. The examples are numerous. So I don't think he's a perfect fit for Newcastle, Sander Burge, but look, I think it would be an extra body in. Again, though, like you say, Sheffield United have got a couple of clubs interested. Fulham are interested, and they need to sell. They need to sell because they're under a transfer embargo at the minute, and they need to sell. They can't do a loan deal, I don't think, for Burge. That won't work. So they need to sell, and I don't think Newcastle are necessarily willing buyers. But again, it could change between now and midnight. But I would say that one's further away from happening than what something like Conor Gallagher potentially is.
Yeah, again, a valid point there made by Bulk and Mag. Says Jorginho is set to join Arsenal, can't see Gallagher going. Yeah, a lot depends on big things happening in other transfer deals, and they are close to agreeing a £12 million deal to sign Jorginho from Chelsea. So that would be interesting. Matt Doherty, is on his way to Atletico Madrid on loan as well. And Leicester are close to completing a deal for striker Nathan Apoku. So, yeah, plenty going on. As I say, plenty to go on until the deadline clock strikes later on tonight after Newcastle have played the semi-final. We haven't talked about Anthony Gordon. Happy to see him come in. Ross, what do you think he'll bring to the side?
I think I said on last week's show that I'm not 100% convinced by Anthony Gordon, and I'm not going to backtrack on that. I think it's important to be honest with your opinions, and it's a deal that surprised me a little bit. I haven't necessarily seen enough from him that suggests that he's the right player for Newcastle, or it's just a signing that slightly surprises me. Having said all that, we go back to what we touched on earlier. Newcastle have got a list of targets, and they're being very, very patient with them. Anthony Gordon is somebody that they tried to sign in the summer, so they couldn't get the deal done then, and they've managed to get the deal done now. So it's obviously a player that they really like, somebody that they think can improve the squad. Similar with Harrison Ashby, another one who they tried to sign in the summer, didn't get the deal done, and have gone back in. Patience, same that we saw with Sven Botman. Bit of patience. If once they've identified this player as being the right fit for the club, then they're quite happy to be patient. I think he's got a lot of good qualities, Anthony Gordon. He's got pace. He's direct. He's somebody who will press from the front. If you look at his pressing stats, if you look at the stats that he's got around kind of winning the ball back in areas high up the pitch, in terms of the amount of pressure that he puts on opposition players, he's, in that sense, he will fit into Newcastle's style, I suppose. He hasn't had a very good season. I think the summer speculation and everything is probably played a part in that, and I think Everton's lack of form is obviously played a part in that as well, and it probably feels like a good move for him. I think he's been angling for a move for a little while, and knowing what happens behind the scenes sometimes with these transfers, it was looking at it in hindsight. Once Newcastle got rid of Chris Wood, they always knew that they didn't get rid of Chris Wood not knowing that they were going to sign Anthony Gordon. I think that was part of the understanding. So personally, I would have liked to have seen somebody come in with a little bit more. How can I phrase this? A little bit more creativity. Somebody who's a little bit more of a ball player. Somebody's a little bit more like a James Maddison who can pick a pass, who can dictate the play a little bit. I don't think Anthony Gordon's that type of player, but he's 21 years old. He's got a lot of experience under his belt for a 21-year-old. He's got a lot of potential, and like we said before, Eddie Howe and his coaching team have maximised players' potential. They've worked with players, improved players, and if they can do the same to Anthony Gordon as what they've done with other players in Newcastle squads, and I'm sure he'll be a good fit. But it was one that surprised us, and it will be a one that I hope you trust Eddie Howe, you trust Dan Ashworth, you've got to trust all these people who are making the decisions because of the track record that they've had over the last 12 months. You know, that they've earned that trust, they've earned that respect. It wouldn't have been somebody that would have necessarily jumped out to me, but you know, these people are a lot savvier, know a lot more about football and about what they need in their team than what I do. So you've got to trust. You've got to put your trust in them.
Yeah, you mentioned the name there, James Maddison. I mean, we've spent lots of hours on this podcast talking about this guy. We might as well combine it with Tielemans because Roger Cook says anything in Tielemans, Ross, or is that a total goner? Look, Newcastle have made it quite clear in the previous transfer window that they are looking to buy James Maddison. We know that he's got at least another year left on his contract. Rumours were abound yesterday that both Tielemans and Maddison have refused to sign new contracts, although that's not a confirmed source. So is this something that we can persevere with, do you think, this window, or do you think that's something best left for the summer? We're just seeing pictures now of John Joe Shelby trudging into Notts Forest. Never looks the most liveliest, even when he's walking around. But yeah, anyway, that deal's done now. But yeah, Maddison and Tielemans, where do you think we're at with those two?
Tielemans, I don't think it'll happen. I don't think Newcastle are minded to push for that. I think he wants to leave probably Leicester on a free in the summer and see what his options are then. Potentially, you know, get a number of clubs fighting and competing for his signature, potentially on the continent as well. I don't think that's one that will happen. But look, I've said previously, let's never say never today because things move very, very quickly, and you can say something at 10 o'clock and by 4 p.m. the situation's changed. But I would be surprised if that one happened with Tielemans. I don't think it's necessarily somewhere Newcastle will go. That said, if they can't get any other deals done for midfielders, it might be on the backup list. But I would be surprised. James Maddison, I don't think it'll happen today as well. Don't think it'll happen in the rest of this window. But again, just repeating what we've just said, Newcastle like him a lot. Think he's somebody who will add value and a little bit of class to their side. They'll be prepared to be patient with James Maddison, just as they were patient with Botman, Ashby, Anthony Gordon, and go back in the summer for James Maddison and put another bid on the table then.
Yeah, okay. Well, I personally feel you're right on that. I can't see that happening now. I will be blown away if Newcastle bring in either one of those. I think it's more likely to be a loan deal. And Burge, as apparently it's pronounced as Roger, I think will probably be the one that they would try. Maybe they'll be forced into bringing him in as a permanent deal. But yeah, if it's a loan deal, potentially Conor Gallagher, and again, Ian McKenna saying that they've just bid 105 million for someone in his position. That may well lead to Gallagher leaving. Am I cold? Says Andrew. I've literally come in from the gym, mate, and running around like a blue backside fly, Andrew. So I haven't had time to take my coat off, but it's quite cozy. And Mr. Anderson is complimenting Ross on his internet connection. It's on form today. Believe it or not, he's using his hotspot. I mean, this is the kind of era we live in where your hotspot's better than your actual.
It's madness, isn't it?
It's the same as me. Going into a rant about Wi-Fi. I updated my modem with Virgin, and it's the worst thing I've done. I'm now having to get plug-in bloody pods in the house to get the Wi-Fi system from downstairs to upstairs. It's absolutely ludicrous. It really is. Anyway, that's the rant over. Roger Cook says, ditch me Tielemans' question. He wants more money in Europe in 6 months on a free. Too late, mate. We've already covered it. Have we moved on from the Matthias Franke speculation, says BT?
Again, not one that I've heard over the last couple of days. Obviously, there was an interest there, but I've not heard anything more on that one. Might be another one that gets revisited in the summer, but I think he's more of a player for the future anyhow. He's not something that Newcastle would be bringing in and expecting to hit the ground running. That's the interesting thing as well about the players that Newcastle have targeted and are bringing in this month, and pretty much in previous months as well, is a lot of the players that they're bringing in have got that Premier League experience or got that experience of English football and can hit the ground running, can adapt very, very quickly. Eddie Howe is very keen on and very big on bringing in players who know the league and know what's needed.
Yeah, Leicester look as if they're doing a bit more business today as well, spending £15 million plus add-ons on Harry Souttar, who is a defender from Stoke. So Leicester certainly splashing the cash. They're spending money that maybe they're going to recoup in this window. Who knows? We will wait and see. Got to ask you about this as well, how this made you feel as a Newcastle fan. You and I are roughly the same age. Sunderland have just signed defender Joe Anderson from Everton on a 3.5-year deal. So business done by the Mackhams. How did this make you feel as a long-term Newcastle fan, Ross, seeing Anthony Gordon being taken around, the facilities, the training ground, and then sitting down with, club officials and his agent and his partner, and just being shown the history of St. James's Park, showing what the club is like and a guide to the area. I mean, it's a little thing that, isn't it? But I noticed the reaction on social media from people as well who were talking more about the fact that the canteen looks great than Anthony Gordon signing. People are impressed about the little changes that are being made at the club.
I think it's really important, though, Steve. I think those little changes around the club, they might just seem very small, but it's attention to detail. It's attention to it's making sure that you can get that extra 1 or 2% out. It's your marginal gains, to quote a well-worn phrase. I think they're really important. And look, every club has fans, has a fan base who think that their club is the greatest club in the world and is extremely special, and have a real passion for their area and for their community. And Newcastle fans are no different. Up here, Newcastle fans have got a real pride in the city, in the northeast, in the club, in the history of the club. So I think that's a really important part for fans, for players to when they come into the club, to understand what makes Newcastle tick, not just from a football club, not just putting the strip on at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon and going out and playing for 90 minutes, understanding what the fan base wants, what the history of the club is, where the club's been in the past, and then in the more recent history, some of the great times, that have made Newcastle United such a fantastic club, but it's also some of the tougher times which have led to the club being where it is now, I suppose, in terms of trying to come back up to the top, but also the passion of the community, the passion of the people, the history of the fan base, of working class roots. I think all this sort of stuff is really important for players to know when they come to Newcastle, to know what they're buying into, to know what the fans expect, and to understand a little bit about the club rather than just coming in as kind of mercenaries. You want them embedded in the community. You want them to have that same passion and feel for the club as what the fans do. And how many times have we seen, Steve, when you speak to a deal with a lot of ex-players. I've spoken to and dealt with a lot of former Newcastle players who, once they leave the club, they're still attached to the area. They still got that they still have that love and that passion. Some come back up here to live and see out the rest of their retirement post football, because they love the players so much. It can get into you and get into your bones. It can become something that just grips you. And I think it's really important from a football perspective for new players to be aware of those things. And yes, it's just a little thing, but it's that attention to detail which the club seems to be really thriving on at the minute.
Yeah, Kieran Gallagher doesn't want to leave London or move north. In fact, any truth in this? So far, only Everton have bidded 45 million for Gallagher. Yeah, Darren, I've heard that as well. I think he would love to go back to Crystal Palace if they're interested in having him. That's probably his chosen place. I mean, he's been there before. He likes the club. I think he'd be hedging for a move there, but we just have to wait and see what happens with that one. Yeah, we do need one more midfielder. I would agree. Paul Watson says the best 2 organisations I've worked for as part of their induction gave the organisation's history. It does make a difference. Why would Chelsea help a rival to loan Maddison with 80 million agreement to buy in the summer? George, there is going to be competition, of course, between clubs. But look, if a player and an agent wants a move, they'll get the move. That's for me. That's the way that it works. Darren says it must be family reasons why the lad's not keen on moving. Yeah, I mean, some kids don't want to move out of certain places. Some people prefer to live in London, and that's it. Ian, about the fact that Gordon was shown, he says he'll know the history. It's a nice touch, but he will know it. It's not like he's from Venezuela. No, he's not from Venezuela. And Roger says we know a lot of Southerners haven't actually really been past the Watford gap. So yeah, it's just great to see Newcastle doing things like that. It should just be, it should be a basic thing, but Newcastle doing things well, and the fact that they're putting it out there and publicising it as well, I think is why we're all talking about it. Okay, halfway through the show, time for the ads. A big thank you to all our sponsors, as always. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and our website skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensaries, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. If you want to make an order, give them a call on 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Thanks to Blowhole Breweries, you can get a selection of beers, and the cans are in the design of the old Newcastle United entertainers strips. Blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Melly's Carpets and Beds, laying our reputation, one recommendation at a time. The best quality around at the cheapest prices. Melly's Beds and Carpets.co.uk. Email sales@mellysbedsandcarpets.co.uk or give Melly a call on 01670 632 216. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK coach holidays in Morpeth, 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Some great deals coming up there. Get yourself onto the website to check them out. Thanks also to Media Arts, who do all of our videos and help us with the technological side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below. Hit the thumb up, which is the like button, which does us a big favour with the algorithm. And click share. Share it to Newcastle United Facebook groups or Twitter accounts or your own social media to help our community grow. And if you want to join the channel, hit the join button. And for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get some members-only videos and chances to win some fantastic prizes. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Don't forget as well that we do events through NUFC Matters. And this one is the next event coming up, Friday the 24th of February, an evening with Newcastle United legend Steve Howie. Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre, and tickets are available at £50 from newcastlelegends.com. If you also go onto Voucher and search for the event, you can pick up a bargain on there. Don't forget, we also support the food bank on this channel. www.nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you can find the Matchday Bucket. You can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year to keep helping the food bank in Newcastle. Nearly time for us to update the adverts as well. We have got a few more events on the go. An evening with Nobby Solano at the Irish Centre, £15 a ticket, book at nufcmatters.com. And a new one we've announced today, an evening with Frank Clark, April the 20th, with Gibbo Tickets are £15 for that one as well. NUFCmatters.com. Both events at the Tyneside Irish Centre. And don't forget as well, 5 tickets left now for an evening with Lee Clark at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Get your tickets direct from the venue for that one. John doesn't miss a trick either. The Anthony Flash Gordon t-shirts are on sale now at NUFCmatters.com. And Felon Cricket Club have asked us to push this one. Supermac and Gibbo at the Felon Cricket Club, February the 16th, 7 o'clock. Tickets are £10 and they are available from the venue. Okay, let's get back to the chat. BT says, Harrison's the second West Ham Academy player to leave the club. Sonny Perkins also elected to snub a contract to sign for Leeds in the summer with his fee to be decided by tribunal. Morning political bias. Senk says there's no need to talk about Anthony Gordon. Before start to talk about him, question to funds, not sure what that means. Who do you want to see come in? Game Gordon or Jacob Murphy? I see what you mean, Senk. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of people are questioning, you know, who's going to make way for Gordon. But I think listening to Eddie Howe yesterday, it's not a case of that. He'll adapt, he'll fit in, he'll see how he works with his teammates, and when he gets his opportunity, like everybody else, Ross, he's going to have to take it. I did say last night that I do feel that when he does come on as a substitute at some point, it's probably going to be at the detriment of maybe it's Jacob Murphy. Murphy might be the one who misses out. There's competition for him, competition for ASM now. Certainly. That's what you need if at a club that's got ambition.
It is. Look, the club's all about improving and moving on and moving forward. And bringing in Anthony Gordon will put pressure and further competition on places. Like I said earlier, I think there's a lot of competition now for those wide forward places. I think there's going to be pressure on everybody to perform, because if you don't, that there's a good alternative in your place. You can't fit in ASM, Miggy Almiron, Anthony Gordon, Jacob Murphy, Joe Linton, Joe Willock. All of these can't all start games at the minute. Alexander Isak, Callum Wilson. There's a lot now of competition in them forward places. So players are going to have to perform, and if players have little dips in form, which we will see. Not everybody's going to continue at the same levels all the way through. It means that you can rest and rotate. You can bring players in off the bench and give some extra competition for places. Someone like Miggy Almiron, for example, who's had a fantastic first half of the season, but if he's going to drop his levels, if his levels are going to fall away, then all of a sudden he knows he's got competition behind him. In the face of ASM and Anthony Gordon, who can come in and help out, and it will mean that one or two players who've experienced a bit more game time, like say Jacob Murphy's, might miss out. But look, it's for the benefit of the club, and everybody wants Newcastle just to continue moving forward.
Yeah, all of a sudden we've got a nice problem. Who's the front three? Says Ian. Yeah, it is a nice problem to have, and that's what it's all about: competition for places. Political biases. Do you think these new signings will put some of the other players' noses out of joint if they don't get a game? Nah, I mean, it's competition, Ross, isn't it? It's
yes.
And I think the most important thing is essentially that Eddie Howe said yesterday, we've monitored Anthony Gordon for a long time from when he was out on loan. We've been watching him. We heard Eddie Howe's conversation in the video that they released yesterday with Anthony Gordon, admitting that it had been a long time that he'd chased him. So this isn't just something he's done overnight. This isn't just an off the cuff signing. There's method in Eddie Howe's madness.
No, that absolutely is. I think they've shown that he's a player that they really value and they really wanted, because they've gone back in for him. They've watched him for a long period, and they've been patient, and they've gone back in for him. He's not somebody who's just become available and they've thought, yeah, actually that sounds like a good deal. Let's jump with that. It's a long-term scouting and monitoring project that they've had there, and they feel that he's one of the best young players that was available who could come in and improve their team. So will it put some noses out of place? I don't know about noses out of place, but some players won't get as much game time, and that's then up to them to how they react. They either react by knuckling down and being patient themselves and proving their worth and shown in training in and around the team that they can still contribute and they're still valued, or they look and think, actually, I might need to move elsewhere to get some game time, like one or two other players have done recently, who realised that they're not going to be playing as much, and they thought, well, I want to go out somewhere else and play regularly. So, it is a bit of a balancing act in terms of when you bring players into a settled squad, to a squad that's been performing really well, and how they fit in, and will they upset one or two key players and create a little bit of tension in his squad, which is something that you don't want. But that's up to Eddie Howe and his coaching staff to manage, and I'm sure they're all over that.
Yeah, John. Yeah, sorry, mate. We did go a little bit earlier today, but obviously with the match being on as well, we wanted to make sure that you got a show. Talking of noses out of place, Ian, that's not nice at all, mate. Sounds like Gallagher is the type of player to get homesick, as he doesn't want to be away from friends and family. That's fair enough. Not everyone likes to move away. I just hope it doesn't upset the harmony that's there now. Yeah, but I mean, it's always a gamble, and Eddie Howe admits it's always a gamble. Garen Qual admits he's desperate for the opportunity to star in the big stage against Rangers tomorrow night. Says experience in top-level football is why he made the switch from Newcastle. Says BT, we've got to remember that we do have a rising star, again, ready to come in when we need him. And Arpico 19 says, James Ward-Prowse is at Newcastle tonight. Sign him after we play them. That would be a brilliant signing for us. Yeah, again, that's another list, another name that's been mentioned on our ever-growing list. Paul Watson says, do you think that's it for the transfer window for Newcastle? If they don't get the right player, it is it, isn't it, Ross, if it's not the right fit?
Yeah, they want the right fit. I don't necessarily think it's it. I think they do want they do want another player to come in. They do want another midfielder to add to the squad between now and the end of the season. So the clock's obviously ticking. I think it will be difficult to bring somebody in because the time is running out, and you don't want to just be making rush decisions on a deadline day just because the clock is counting down. So they do want one more in. They do want to do a bit more business, but whether they can get that sorted in the time frame that's remaining is going to be very tricky.
A so-called Marquee signing is the last thing we need, says John. We seem to be doing okay. A big name with a big ego is not what the doctor ordered. It is potentially disruptive. And yeah, I agreed. John Askew says political bias. I think Newcastle are fully aware of that. And I get the impression that, Eddie Howe does his homework and has done his homework on the players that he wants. He's dotted the I's and crossed the T's. Jack Harrison potentially moving from Leeds to Leicester seems to have a lot of people excited on Twitter at the minute, more or less, saying that if that happens, then, maybe the Maddison deal could happen, today. So again, lots of ifs and buts, but ifs and buts, mean nothing at the minute. Ian says, trust me, I'm 100% behind Gordon. I think he's the perfect fit for us. Hardworking, pacey, loves a tackle, young, perfectly fits our vision. 100%, Ian. He's a top player. And you know what? He'll be like, a cross between Craig Bellamy and David Speedy. You've got to be a certain vintage to remember David Speedy. He's the player that you love to have playing for you, but love to hate if he's playing against you. Enzo Fernandez being chased by Chelsea. They have enough this window, and we should steal the purchase, says Jacob. Tom brings up a name from the past. Would you not go Harry Winks? He's not getting a game at Tottenham. Again, Harry Winks, somebody who was blue-eyed boy at Spurs for a while, but when Conte came in, doesn't get a look in, does he, Ross? It's another one, I guess, but I'm not sure that would feature.
No, I don't think Harry Winks will be somebody who'll end up at Newcastle this transfer window. He's an interesting player. He's one of those who's kind of always threatened to break through to become an established Premier League player, but for whatever reason, it's never happened for him. He can't get his game at Spurs, and he's not really played much football over the last couple of seasons either, so I would be steering well clear of that one. Yeah,
as you say, he's not played much, and that certainly wouldn't really that wouldn't fit Newcastle's remit, I don't think. How was it serving hot drinks last week, Ross? Talking about Wickham, of course.
Yes, running the cafe on last Tuesday, the game against Heaven, because it clashed with the Newcastle game, so we were a little bit short-staffed. But yeah, serving hot drinks, frying the chips, clean the change rooms, do the lot, mate, Steve. You know, don't mind chipping in and helping out.
Yeah, it was a great photo on social media. Did you see how Leeds left the changing rooms after the FA Cup of the weekend? That's proper done. They'd swept it up. They'd put the bin in the middle. All the bottles and tape and everything was in. It was just like a proper Sunday morning football shot. That did you see that?
I didn't see it. No, I didn't see it. But it's good to see. We have a lot of. You know, we do the same. A lot of clubs come to our place and they're always trying to make an effort of cleaning the change rooms as well. So, no, I didn't see that with Leeds, so I'll have to take a look. Yeah,
it was excellent, mate. It really was. Okay, Newcastle United are in Carabao Cup semi-final action tonight. They hold a 1-0 advantage from the first meeting. And this isn't going to be as easy as just turning up and being awarded a place in the final. Newcastle United are going to have to work for this tonight. Southampton are no mugs. The game is going to be shown live on Sky Sports. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. If the scores are level after 90 minutes, an additional 30 minutes is played tonight. And if that doesn't settle it, penalties it will be. Were extra time to be played, of course, then each side would be granted an additional 6th substitute. Just worth knowing that. Southampton were given 3,700 tickets. Not sure how many they've used. And following the successful appeal in the quarterfinals by War Flags against Leicester, fans are requested to take black and white scarves once again to the game tonight. Newcastle United are unbeaten in the last 14 League and Cup games at St James's Park since Liverpool won 1-0 in April. As for the squad news and injury news, Matt Targett remains unavailable, while new arrival Anthony Gordon can't play because he is cup-tied, having already played for Everton against Bournemouth. As for Southampton, well, they played at the weekend, of course, in the FA Cup and beat Blackpool 2-1 at St Mary's. And Nathan Jones made 8 changes to his starting lineup, clearly with one eye on the semi-final second leg. He brought Theo Walcott off the bench during the second half. Coletta Carr will be available following his sending off in the first leg. He serves his one-match ban, having served his one-match ban against Blackpool. There could be a debut for new signing James Bree, and fellow defender Jan Bednarek should feature after being cup-tied on Saturday. The referee for tonight's game is Paul Tierney. This is his second game in charge of Newcastle United fixture after the 4-0 Premier League home win over Aston Villa. We do have VAR tonight, and in charge of that is Darren England. Don't forget, the food bank is open tonight across the road from the ground opposite Shearer's. And if you make a donation to the food bank today, then Jamie Rubin has continued his pledge this season to double all cash donations made on home match days. Okay, big game this. The biggest for a long time, Ross, for Newcastle United fans. A win or a draw, and Newcastle United are back at Wembley. How good does it sound?
Oh, it sounds good. Hopefully, it'll sound even better in the morning when it's hopefully all confirmed. I think there's going to be a few nerves around St James's Park tonight, and certainly for the rest of this afternoon as we build into the game, because it's been such a long time since obviously Newcastle got to a cup final. It's tantalisingly within grasp. It is so close, and the way Newcastle are playing and in the form that they've shown, you've got to be confident. You have to be confident because the going is favourites with a 1-0 advantage, home advantage, and a team that's riding high with confidence against a Southampton team which is up and down and doesn't have the same. For me, doesn't have the same levels of quality that Newcastle United have. So in one sense, you have to be really confident. But look, it's a semi-final. I think I don't think anybody would be forgiven for having a bucket load of nerves heading into tonight's game.
Big question is, what do you think you'll do with the team? I personally feel Newcastle will be unchanged tonight.
I agree. I think they'll be unchanged. I think they'll be. I think it'll be this a very, very similar team, if not exactly the same team. I think Callum Wilson will start up front. I think it'll be I think Joe Willock and Joe Linton will continue their left-hand side partnership. Isak off the bench, St. Maximum off the bench, same back four, same goalkeeper.
We've lost Ross.
Much the same.
We lost you there, mate. We lost you there. Sorry, mate. What were you saying about Isak? We lost you there.
Yeah, sorry. Isak, I think, will be on the bench. Same with ASM, and bring them on in the last half an hour if required. But I do think it'll be very, very much the same starting lineup as what happened in the first leg.
Yeah, I think what we heard yesterday from Eddie Howe at the press conference was confirmation that Callum Wilson certainly will start, because there was a couple of questions from the press yesterday about Wilson, and I think Ian Murter asked the question about Wilson's form, and he just said, look, this is the first week that Callum Wilson has managed to train for the full week since the World Cup. So I've never doubted his ability to score goals. So clearly there will be that disappointment from Wilson that he's not finding the back of the net. I think Alan Shearer pointed out in the first tie, he only touched the ball 15 times, or it might have been someone else who mentioned that. It was whoever was commentating on the game said he'd only touched the ball 15 times. Les Ferdinand, that's who it was. And he said that's not great for a centre forward. So Wilson will certainly be looking to make a mark tonight, won't he?
He will, and let's be honest about it. He's been a fantastic player for Newcastle ever since he joined the club from Bournemouth. He's put his body on the line. He's led that attack. He's scored important goals. He's led from the front in terms of his pressing, and not giving centre halves a moment's rest. When he's fit and firing, he's a really, really good player. But he hasn't been the same player over the last month. There's no doubt at all about that. Whether it's the remnants of the illness, or a little bit of fatigue coming back from the World Cup, or whatever. Players lose form for all sorts of different reasons, and he hasn't quite beat that at those levels that we know that Callum Wilson can hit. Having said all that, he remains a really integral part of Newcastle's team, and especially the way that they want to play as a front three. So if he's anywhere near fitness, Eddie Howe clearly trusts him, clearly wants him in that team, because even though he hasn't been quite at his best, he's persevered with him, and he's kept faith and trust in him, and started him in the majority of games. So I fully expect him to start tonight, and let's hope he can return with a goal, because it's been a few games now. I think 11 games for club and country since he scored. Let's hope that he breaks that drought tonight. He ends that drought tonight, and puts Newcastle on the way to Wembley.
Yeah, I genuinely feel as well that the substitutes can play that part. I mean, Isak, has been outstanding when he's come on, and I think Ian McKenna, has said he really likes him. The form that he's in at the moment as well. There it is. I was trying to find the message. Isak has scored and assisted in the last 2 games. I think Isak's just a better player than Wilson. It's just good. It's competition. That's what I keep saying. We need competitions, don't we, across the pitch, and that will push Wilson on to perform better as well.
It absolutely will. It certainly will as well. But the impact that players can make off the bench is really important as well. It's not even a 95-minute game these days. It's sometimes 100 minutes games these days. You need to have options off the bench. You need to be able to freshen things up and play in a different style if needs be, because the team that you start off with is never the team that you finish a game with. There's going to be points in a match where it requires a different approach, or it requires fresh legs. So to be able to bring somebody of Isak's quality, his pace, his ability off the bench is massive for Newcastle. He can impact the game. He's shown he can impact the game. He did it. He did it against Southampton last week, setting up the winner for Joe Linton. So he's a great option to have off the bench. And Newcastle's bench all of a sudden looks a little bit stronger, doesn't it? When you've got your Isaacs on there and your ASMs and one or two others who if you need to change a game, if you need a little bit of inspiration, they can come on and kind of finish the game off, almost finishers as much as starters. So I think regardless of what team starts tonight, there'll be 15, 16 players who all need to play their part and help Newcastle get over the line.
And 16, if you include the crowd, because Newcastle United's crowd, very important tonight. The call to arms is there for everybody to hear. Take your scarf to Ross, and there's nothing better. Eddie Howe said there's nothing better than getting out onto that touchline and seeing St James's Park like that.
The atmosphere has been fantastic, hasn't it, over recent games, and certainly in the cup games as well. It's been phenomenal. The crowd have definitely got a part to play. We've seen how it can impact the team coming out the blocks really, really sharp. I think if Newcastle start really well tonight, if they get a goal in that first 15, 20 minutes and kind of come out like a house on fire, take the chances, which I'm sure they'll create a couple of chances in that first 10, 15 minutes. If they can take those chances and put Southampton on the back foot, the game could theoretically be over by half time. I know I'm maybe getting myself a little bit carried away and a little bit optimistic, but I think that's really important if they start the game well, buoyed on by the crowd, by the atmosphere, by the vibrant and passion of the Newcastle fans. Then the game could be put out of reach for Southampton. The longer it goes on and it might be tight and it might be a bit nervy, then that arguably plays into Southampton's hands a little bit. So I do think it's important that the passion on the touchline, on the stands, in the stands, is replicated by a really positive, vibrant first 15, 20, 25 minutes by the players as well.
Okay, prediction for tonight's game, Ross.
I'm going to be really, really positive and go with a 3-0 Newcastle win.
Wow. Okay, that is positive. You're not the first one who I've heard give that scoreline either. I'm going to go for a more conservative 2-0 win. I think Newcastle will do the business tonight, 3-0 on aggregate. But yeah, I am confident. We need an early goal though. Newcastle must get that early goal to settle the nerves, because the longer it goes on 0-0, with in this second leg game, with Newcastle having that narrow 1-0 lead, it just gives you that awful feeling. Newcastle go 2-0 up in the tie. Yeah, I think Southampton heads will go down, and Newcastle may well get what Ross and a few others have predicted. But hope everybody enjoys the game tonight, and we will be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock with Geordie's here. Geordie's there with a full panel of Newcastle United fans, hopefully celebrating a cup final at Wembley, and hopefully celebrating maybe one or two more through the door in the transfer window. But Ross, for now, great to see you, mate. Look forward to catching up with you next week. Take care.
Cheers, Steve. Thanks, everyone.